Not only is this the first smartphone on the planet to use Samsung's new 50 megapixel ISOCELL GN5 sensor, but one of the most insanely spec'd phones I have ever used. We're talking a 150 degree field of view ultra-wide camera, 60mm telephoto lens, LTPO 2.0 WQHD plus AMOLED display with a whopping 1500 nits of brightness, skinned with Gorilla Glass Victus, 4nm run Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, 12 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM, 3D Sonic Max ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, 4700 mAh battery, 120 watt wired charging, 50 watt wireless charging, BMW M branding, and best of all, it cost the exact same price as its predecessor. This is TechNick, and this is the iQOO 9 Pro. The iQOO 9 Pro comes in two different color variants. You can pick it up in a burnt engine orange, which is a carbon fiber vegan leather, or the version that I have here known as the Legendary Edition, which is actually a frosted glass carbon fiber finish, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It does come with a case in the box that pretty much makes it look as if it's not even using a case, since it resembles the actual design of the device itself, but I'm not too sure about that camera visor at the back being so widespread out and not necessarily needing it. We have a 4700 mAh battery under the hood, as well as 120 watt wired charging, a 50 watt wireless charging, a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, and a new 3-dimensional 18-fold vapor chamber cooling system. It is skinned with Gorilla Glass Victus on the front, an aluminum frame wraps around, and of course you have glass or vegan leather at the back. Within that unnecessarily massive camera module at the back, we are kitted with a 150 degree field of view 50 megapixel Samsung ISOCELL JN1 ultra wide sensor, as well as a 50 megapixel Samsung ISOCELL GN5 sensor, the first in the world to do so, and completing the trio is a 16 megapixel telephoto cam. And when comparing it to the Xiaomi 12 Pro on its left hand side and the Realme GT Pro on its right, the iQOO 9 Pro does have the fisheye effect thanks to that 150 degree ultra wide sensor, which matches the Realme GT2 Pro, which was actually the world's first. But where the iQOO one-ups the Realme over here is that it can actually shoot its 150 degree field of view mode using 50 megapixel native, whereas the Realme GT2 Pro can only bin it down to 12.5. And of course, once the iQOO 9 Pro does bin it down, it naturally looks slightly brighter thanks to AI. The iQOO 9 Pro can also shoot native 50 megapixel shots using the ultra wide cam at a slightly lower field of view at 119 degrees, and of course it can also bin down to 12.5 megapixels for a neater looking shot. But the 50 megapixel ISOCELL GN5 sensor is where this device truly shines, as you can see with the native 50 megapixel shots over here, as opposed to the Xiaomi 12 Pro and Realme GT2 Pro's lesser lenses. And when binning down these shots, once again, things start to look a bit crispier, especially when indoors. That GN5 sensor can also zoom in 2 times to get digital zoom over here just before the telephoto cam kicks in at 2.5 times, but at 2 times the Xiaomi 12 Pro uses optical zoom thanks to its 50 megapixel telephoto lens that is currently binned down to 12.5 megapixel, showing quite a bit more detail than that of the iQOO and the Realme. But as soon as we hit 2.5 times zoom, we are using optical on the iQOO 9 Pro over here thanks to its 16 megapixel telephoto cam, which renders slightly more detail than the other two. Hopping on over to 5 times digital zoom on all 3 devices, the two on the left using their telephoto lens to digitally zoom, while the Realme lacks a telephoto lens and is only using its main camera. And you can clearly see the results over here with the iQOO truly shining quite a bit ahead of the Xiaomi and way above the Realme. And when it comes to 10 times digital zoom over here, the iQOO seriously outshines the other two once more over here thanks to really absorbing all the light around it and keeping all the details looking nice and natural. Do bear in mind that the max zoom of the iQOO 9 Pro is 30 times, which is 10 times higher than the Realme and Xiaomi device, which is something that we're going to be testing out in the full review. And when taking a shot to get a bit of depth perception over here, you can see that the edge detection is nearly perfect on the iQOO 9 Pro, but I can't really complain about the other two either. We can also film ultra-wide video on all devices here at 4K, though the Realme is capped at 30 FPS, while the iQOO 9 Pro can do 60 FPS. The iQOO 9 Pro can also shoot at 150 degrees field of view ultra-wide, where the Realme actually lacks video for it. And we can use 4K 60 FPS with the main sensor, thanks to Gimbal stabilized optical image stabilization, using that 5-axis gimbal lens on the main cam. The cameras are absolutely incredible. I can't wait to deep dive into them in the full review. We have a textured power button on the right hand side side, as well as a volume rocker. At the bottom, we have a dual SIM 5G dual 5G standby tray. Unfortunately, no expandable storage, but it does have a water-resistant seal. We have a USB Type-C 2.0 port. I still can't understand why companies aren't doing 3.0. First speaker at the bottom, second speaker at the top over there, and we do have a 16 megapixel selfie camera, though this is the exact same one used in the iQOO 8 Pro. And when it comes to selfies, while the Xiaomi and Realme boast twice the amount of megapixel counts, I actually feel like the iQOO's image comes out a bit more natural, though the Xiaomi does tend to pack in a tad more detail. And switching over to portrait mode, once again, no gripes in terms of edge detection on either device over here. All of them look pretty decent, but I must say that the Realme looks a tad washed out. But one of the downfalls of the device is that we're capped at 1080p 30 FPS selfie video recording. And while we're capped at 1080p 30 FPS and the Xiaomi can do 60 FPS, I actually think the Vivo's looks the best. So I guess the selfie camera is the only thing that's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to this device, but once again, I'm going to test this out in thorough detail in the full review. And pulling down the device and powering it on for the first time over here, the first thing that we're going to be checking out is the Qualcomm 3D Sonic Max Ultrasonic Fingerprint sensor, which debuted with the iQOO 8 Pro, and it is a massive sensor. It takes one jab to register your fingerprint, and you can choose a bunch of different features to go along with it. It is 9 times bigger than the ultrasonic sensor found within the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, and it has a whopping size of 20 by 30 millimeters and takes just 0.2 seconds to register your finger. And yes, you can pretty much put it anywhere within that massive box. Now, if you are wondering if there are different animation effects with the new OriginOS Ocean, they've added in a couple new ones, but they are in relation to a wallpaper that you choose. They look pretty neat, but I kind of like the big square box that showcases that wonderful huge fingerprint sensor. We also have 2D face unlock here, not 3D face unlock. It uses the selfie cam, and hopping into settings, jumping into the new OriginOS Ocean, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty similar to OriginOS 1.0. You can now add more columns and rows, which is nice, and you can't switch through a parallel world to regular FunTouch OS. I'm not sure how many of you feel about it, but I actually really like the software. It has all the bells and whistles such as monster mode to beef it up, as well as separating and adding cubes, loads of different widgets you can play around with, tons and tons and tons of customizations, which of course I'll be diving into in the full review. It just does so much right, and there's just so much to customize over here. There's not much not to love. The one thing that you can love is that there is Google, but the one thing that you can't really love is that while Google works and I can actually sign into my account, and yes, you can download the Play Store from the actual built-in Vivo App Store, it actually doesn't open. I've never seen this on an iQOO device. I'm pretty sure it will get fixed with the software update. I'll keep you guys posted on that one, once again in the full review. Now, we do have 12 gigs of RAM, and we can extend it by an extra 4 gigs of RAM, though do bear in mind that uses UFS 3.1 storage. And let's not forget about that beefed up Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset run on 4nm processed node technology, which is supposedly 20% more powerful than its predecessor and 30% more power efficient. And once slapping on monster mode, the iQOO 9 Pro got a whopping score of 1,028,322 points, which is more than 20,000 points higher than the next in line being the Xiaomi 12 Pro with the same chipset, and way higher than its predecessor, the iQOO 8 Pro. And I guess we kind of need all that power because we are running a native 1440p WQHD plus resolution over here with a pixels per inch of 518. The display itself is 6.78 inches in size. It is an E5 AMOLED panel over here. It is of course curved. It has 1 billion colors, HDR10 plus supports 112% DCI-P3 and 140% sRGB color gamut rating, 1500 nits of peak brightness, and of course we were also treated to that new LTPO 2.0 technology, which ranges between 1 and 120 Hz, and slapping it on max refresh rate, that being 120, things feel nice and silky smooth. The iQOO 9 Pro checks almost every box out there, thanks to its out-of-this-world display technology, incredibly reliable super fast 3D Sonic Max ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, super powered Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chipset, massive 4700 mAh battery with 120 watt wide and 50 watt wireless charging. Not to mention it packs in one of the best camera systems I have ever used, making me extremely excited to deep dive into all aspects of the device. So make sure to like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so that you are notified as soon as my full review drops, which should be within the next week. This is Tech Nick, and I'll see you in the next one.